The first documented case of hazing took place in 1737, and it involved Freemasons' founding father, Benjamin Franklin, and an oath to the devil. Listen to this. Daniel Rees was described as not a smart man, and he was an apprentice to a pharmacist named Dr. Evan Jones. So as part of his quote-unquote initiation, he was made to pledge his loyalty to Satan. However, his initiation was completely fake, and he was being pranked. During this fake initiation, he was made to drink from a quote-unquote sacramental cup, which contained a laxative, and he had to kiss the behind of one of the other members. Also, during his initiation, a man named Sullivan was dressed in a cow's hide with horns, and he was impersonating the devil. They lit a bowl of brandy for lighting in the cellar, and it had a spooky look, and Daniel was taking everything so seriously that the others stopped having fun. There was a game that dates back to the 16th century, and it's called Snapdragon, and it involves lighting brandy on fire, and that made the flames have an eerie blue look. So you can imagine how scary it would look under someone's chin in the dark. Now, Dr. Jones either threw or accidentally spilled the bowl of burning brandy, and Daniel was set on fire. He passed away 2 days later. When Benjamin Franklin, who was a Freemason, heard about the prank around town, he asked for a copy of this oath of allegiance to Satan, and he showed it around to other people. He became a witness for the prosecution. Dr. Evan Jones was found guilty of manslaughter, and he was branded in his hand. From 1959 to 2020, at least one U.S. school, club, or organization hazing death has been reported every year. The organization StopHazing.org specifies 3 components of hazing. Number 1, it happens in a group. Number 2, it involves behavior that is humiliating, degrading, or endangering. And number 3, it happens regardless of whether the individual is willing to participate. There are, unfortunately, plenty of people who are unwillingly taking ungodly oaths that last a lifetime or multiple generations. They will follow ritual books and give up their dignity in order to belong to these secret societies. Most become interested in Greek organizations for positive reasons. Their mother or grandmother pledged Zeta Phi Beta or Alpha Kappa Alpha, so they decide to do the same. We all want to feel a sense of belonging in one way or another. From a young age, Jordan Hankins had a passion for helping others and a gift when it came to playing sports. She won a full ride to Northwestern University on a basketball scholarship. And on her sophomore year, she told her parents that she wanted to join a sorority because she wanted to serve others. Her mother was there to watch the ceremony in which her daughter became an official member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Her mother, Felicia, said that she felt a sense of pride, a sense of relief because, the process was over, she said. But just 7 weeks later, her 19-year-old daughter would take her own life in her dorm room. This happened on January the 9th in 2017. 2 years after her death, her mother filed a complaint in federal court against AKA, and the complaint alleged that Jordan was subjected to physical abuse, including paddling, verbal abuse, mental abuse, financial exploitation, sleep deprivation, items being thrown and dumped on her, and other forms of hazing that were intended to humiliate and demean her. The abuse triggered her PTSD, and it caused the constant anxiety and depression that eventually led to her death. Just 3 years earlier, Madison Holleran, who was also an athlete, she took her own life, and she too suffered from depression. Victoria Carter was known for her fashion sense. She was also extremely ambitious and determined. Even though she was involved in multiple extracurricular activities, she still held down a 4.0 GPA. She was a double major in business and marketing with a minor in communication at East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. She had plans to attend Yale and become a lawyer, and she believed that joining a sorority would help her get there. So in the fall of 2010, she attended what's called a rush activity, which is a meeting where you learn about the sorority and how you can become a member. Now, once she submitted her application, she started receiving phone calls to run errands for the sisters, like wash their clothes or whatever they wanted done. Eventually, Victoria was so exhausted that her grades started to slip, and so she started to panic. During an orientation for new pledges, she learned about hazing, how it wasn't allowed in the sorority, and that anyone involved in hazing would be expelled. She knew that those so-called errands were actually hazing, and that she could be expelled if she was ever found out. And of course, that was the last thing that she wanted. She wanted to help her family. Her mother was a single mom, and she worked 2 or 3 jobs at a time, and she sometimes struggled to pay the bills. So Victoria wanted to be able to take that stress away from her and her siblings that she also helped to care for while her mother was at work. Now, I learned a little bit about Delta Sigma Theta and how it involves bowing down to the Greek goddess Minerva. That, among other things, is causing a lot of women to renounce their membership. Each of the 9 Black Greek organizations called the Divine Nine is associated with a Greek god or goddess. Because so many of the Divine Nine organizations say they are based on Christian principles, Christian women are often drawn to them, only to regret their decision later.
You have to go get them food. They don't care if you don't have money. You gotta go get their dry cleaning. On top of that, you gotta go do house visits. So house visits is like when you go meet up with big sisters that are just in town. It's you and like 2 or 3 other people with you. And mind you, you could never be by yourself. If they ever caught you on campus by yourself, they would kidnap you. Like on top of that, like not even the Deltas, but like if the Qs, which was the brother for fraternity of us, caught us, they could kidnap us. And then they would have to call your license. They would have to come get you. Like they could do whatever to you. You know, you have to get in the cut, which I mean like take licks, smile wipe you. They do this thing where they make you sit in Delta chair, which is basically like squats. They sit on you. They spit on you. They hit, you know what I mean?
They spit on you?
Hair. Yeah. They do all that. I mean, some of the stuff that we had to do at set, I mean, the most demeaning, disgusting stuff that you could ever imagine. We would do this thing called Delta Apple, where we would literally all take and bite out of an onion and like pass it to each other. You know, we would eat dog food. If one of the girls on the line had like the prettiest hair, they would ruin it. What else? You know, pushing, shoving, smacking, hitting. You would have to take wood. Wood is where they got the big paddles. You would have to get in the position and they would just tag you in, tag you out, you know.
Another time, pledges were forced to wear Delta lipstick, which consists of hot sauce being rubbed on their lips. There was also the Delta TV, which is similar to a plank, and it's where pledges were forced to hold a push-up position for a long period of time. For several weeks, the sorority made 17 pledges share a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment that they named the Duck Pond because of how crowded it was. Their own parents weren't even allowed to know where they were living. Because of this living situation, the pledges endured weeks of sleep deprivation. The girls attempted to sleep in closets, on couches, and even in the bathroom. On top of all of that, the pledges that were also called pyramids had to endure what's known as Hell Week. During this same time, they were also preparing for probate, which is an elaborate ceremony where the pledges perform and the sorority introduces them. And they had to practice over and over and over until they got it right. Before the ceremony, they didn't even have an opportunity to get some decent sleep, and they had a hair appointment scheduled for 6:30 the morning of the ceremony. The induction ceremony was around 3:30 on November the 20th in 2010. Camille Arrington was appointed the designated driver by sorority leaders, and during Hell Week, she only slept for about 6 to 7 hours that entire week. On the way to their hair appointment, Camille ran off the road and she hit a tree. Victoria Carter was 20. She died on impact from a broken neck. And Brianna Gaither, also 20. She died a few hours later, and they were both in the back seat. Camille pled guilty to 2 counts of misdemeanor death by motor vehicle, and according to the lawsuit, she was suffering from excessive and overwhelming fatigue, exhaustion, and sleep deprivation, and she simply fell asleep behind the wheel. She was ordered to serve 1 year of supervised probation and perform 100 hours of community service. The sorority tried to cover up the hazing by deleting emails, text messages, documents, and by threatening pledges. They even had a fax sent to the funeral home telling them not to display anything related to Delta. They claimed that she wasn't a member because she died hours before the actual induction ceremony. And Victoria's mother said that every September, when the leaves start to change, she thinks about the last time that she saw her daughter. In 3 separate incidents of hazing in 2009, Jasmine Johnson was punched in the head, the chest, and the stomach. She was also kneed in the stomach and the back, and she had vinegar sprayed in her face. On one of the times that she was kneed in the stomach, she was actually bleeding and suffering from extreme headaches and stomach pains while she was attending the ceremony where the new members were pinned and accepted into the sorority. This is when she finally told her mother what had happened. Her mother took her to the hospital, and they learned that Jasmine had a concussion along with bruising and contusions to her stomach. Her injuries were reported to the sorority, and they were told that it would be handled internally. Her injuries were reported to the sorority, and she and her mother were told that it would be handled internally. Now, one day, Jasmine and her mother were parked outside of the college bookstore when another car pulled up behind them and started to get closer and closer to them. It was members of the sorority. Once Jasmine got out of the car, they yelled that she better watch her back, and they called her a bitch. Jasmine and her mother then contacted a lawyer, and they filed a report with the university and the Chattanooga Police Department. On September the 9th in 2002, around 10 o'clock at Dockweiler State Beach in California, police spotted at least 11 women running across the beach. They were all dressed the same. They had on black running shoes, thick black sweatshirts, and black jogging pants. 4 of the pledges were blindfolded and driven to Playa del Rey, California. Now, once they arrived at the beach, they were led into the ocean backwards, which is a staple of West Coast pledge rituals. During the ritual, pledges would walk through the waves and towards the leader who was standing in the water, urging them to come closer. Now, 2 of the members were Kenitha Saphir and Kristen Hyde. Now, Kenitha was 24. She was married and was a tax specialist with the IRS. Kristen was 22 and was a business major and a leader on the campus. She also had a fiance and a 2-year-old son named Skylar. Joining AKA, the oldest black sorority in the United States, was something that she had always dreamed about. Now, that night, the surf was unusually high, and the waves had gotten up to at least 10 feet high. It was a large wave that knocked Kenitha down, and it pulled her under the water. Kristen was a strong swimmer, and she knew that Kenitha couldn't swim, so she rushed to try and save her, but she too was pulled under. At 11:22 p.m., 911 dispatchers received a call about a loud commotion at the beach. The beach was actually closed at that time, so nobody should have been there to begin with. A minute later, a second call came in about a woman screaming for help. When the police got there about 3 minutes later, they saw 2 bodies being tossed in the surf about 50 yards from the beach. Soon the beach was crowded with ambulances, fire trucks, squad cars, rescue boats, and a helicopter with searchlights. Around midnight, LAPD officers Robert Espinoza and Charles Rodriguez dove in to pull Kenitha and Kristen out and attempt to revive them, but unfortunately they were pronounced dead. The police showed up in the middle of the night to tell Kristen's mother that her daughter had drowned. On the news, their deaths were reported as simply co-eds partying at the beach. Days before she died, she had told her family about the hazing that she was going through. She was being called on, no matter what time of the day or night, to cook, to paint fingernails, to be a driver, to do chores, or to braid hair. One night, her mother said that she came home with green paint all over her. Kristen, Kenitha, and 2 other pledges were worked to exhaustion every night in sessions that would last until at least 1 or 2 in the morning. The night that they died, they had spent hours at the beach doing calisthenics before they were made to walk backwards into the ocean. When sorority members brought Kristen's car home, her pledge journal was missing and numbers had been deleted from her phone. Neither the pledges or any members of the sorority attended the funerals, even though they had spent hours at Kristen's mother's home eating with her family and playing with Kristen's son. They were the only ones who could tell her mother what really happened, but they couldn't even look her in the face. A former cop told her mother that he had had an easier time infiltrating street gangs than penetrating the AKA organization. It turned out that the sorority chapter they were pledging had been suspended for over a decade, but none of the girls knew that. Fortunately, the deaths of Christian and Knipa were not in vain. Author Lawrence Ross Jr. said that their deaths were like 9/11 for fraternities and sororities because it forced a lot of people out of denial. Police say the drownings were accidental, and although hazing wasn't ruled out, no evidence of wrongdoing, including blindfolds or rope, was found at the scene or on the women. Bad company corrupts good character. So when surviving brutality is seen as a badge of honor or bonding experience, and keeping secrets is a way to measure loyalty, and sororities and fraternities live by a code of silence, can anything actually stop hazing?